Oh, I'll say Sina, Rita, Martha.
No.
Helen.
No, everyone's gonna mistake you now. That was great. That was great. Yeah.
And you're grandma name.
Okay.
Do you want to move?
Find something.
It's okay. Well, I know
Okay. Ready? Oh, you have a chair? Okay. So they say, if you took all your problems and you put them in a little, rolled them up in a little ball and threw them into a pile.
You want that.
Exactly. Right? You'd go and say, okay, which ball of problems am I taking? Most people would probably just take their own problems back. So we all have challenges, right? Everyone has their own problems, issues, problems that, like they always say, money can't buy happiness or give you a trouble-free life. Sometimes money gives you more problems, right? Just spoke to a lady recently, their mother's not even dead yet, but they're fighting over their inheritance, It's terrible, right? You look at even countries. Countries also have problems, right? Each country has their own political challenges, their own corruption, their own whatever type way they run their country. There's always, whether it's a, capitalistic country, a socialistic country, all countries have problems, right? And all politicians in each country, no one's perfect, right? So wherever you go, there's social issues, there's criminal issues, there's all kinds of problems. No one's immune from anything. Relationships, you can go into every aspect of life. There's always issues and always problems. We say, oh my God, why did you give me these problems? Get rid of them. Let's do, why can't you just make my life easy? So right, whether it's relationship problems, or you might have a great relationship with your spouse, but a terrible relationship with your kids, or you might have a terrible relationship with your parents, but a great relationship. Everyone different people have different issues all around. It is, and sometimes you're like, oh, why do I have to deal with this? Why do I have to go through this? Or you have your own personal issues. Maybe someone's insecure or have fears, anxieties, depressions, addictions. No one's perfect. The world's not perfect. Everyone has all their things that's bothering them. So imagine if we can all take an Ozempic, that was for you, and just to make it all seem, everything go away, everything's gonna be perfect, right? Just take a little pill and all problems in life disappear. How would that feel? Oh, hi, Eileen. Eileen joined. Okay, great. Yeah, well, hopefully that will be good for you. But so imagine we just took a pill, all these issues would disappear, okay? Would you take that pill and why or why not? That's a question. Yeah, that's a question.
Would I take the pill?
Would you take the pill if you knew you take this pill, all your problems will go away and you can live your hunky-dory life? Well,
I would take it, even though I feel so blessed and I have many fewer problems than most people I know, I would still take it.
Okay,
why not?
why?
I mean, why not? Because then you wouldn't have worry and anxiety. You would know that what's coming up. Like right now, I feel so incredibly blessed. I mean, I would like to get married, whatever, but I feel so lucky, so blessed. But like, you don't know in the future what's going to come up in your life. So this way you'd be guaranteed to not have that anxiety or worry.
Okay, so it'll keep you free of worry.
Yeah.
No new problems will arise when you take it, right? This is like forever.
It's a magic.
There was nothing new is going to come about.
Nothing new will come about, but you might just stay stagnant on the other hand.
Okay, but no new tragedy.
Well, that's a good question. Because then you'd be robotic and you won't feel the pain or the emotion.
Okay.
It's sort of masking, I'm just saying, like, if you're at the hospital and they have the happy, like, how do you feel? And you'd always like, oh, happy.
10. Yeah.
But in reality, how do you feel?
Right.
So
I veto that because you already gone through that. You already know pain. If you were birthed that way, I would agree. Birth, yes. Now that we've all had life, no. I mean, we know we've had tragedy, we've had stuff, so now we're older and wiser. So we have a memory. We have a
Mhm.
memory. And we remember how it was.
But what
So-
about emotional
I have
stuff too?
emotion. I have never no.
Well, what, so then why, so then,
Well,
right, so then why does God give us problems?
Well, I feel like when you have problems when you're younger, it's actually good because it makes you a much more like deep and compassionate person. And you learn through your mistakes and you evolve and become a better person. So once we've all gotten to like, the ages we are now, like to be able to avoid pain in the future, I think, okay, we learned the lessons. But I think if you just live a sterile life from birth, it's not good. You don't evolve unless you have incredible capacity for empathy and growth and evolution.
Okay, good. So good, great. So let's see what the Torah has to say about challenges, about all the things that we face. I'll tell you in a minute, and how they affect us. It's page 156. Okay, so there is a very not known story that takes place in this week's Parsha, this week's Torah portion. Okay, so we all heard of the splitting of the sea, right? Moses split the sea. But has anyone ever heard of the miracle in Arnon, the valley of Arnon? Hi, Eileen.
Hi.
Your face. Okay, great. Okay, so let me tell you about the story. So in this week's Parsha, there's a very special story that takes place. How the Jewish people were kind of saved miraculously. But actually, before we get to that story, we're going to go to more recent times, 1956 in Israel. There was I guess, some type of war or ambush in the Sinai Desert called the Milta Pass. And there's a little bit of history of that war. And then we're going to go to the Parsha and tell us about the war back in the days in the desert. Okay, to text 1A, who would like to read it?
I'll read it.
Okay, go for it, Eileen.
Okay. The pilots reported that the pass seemed empty. I didn't expect opposition inside Mitla Pass. The
Mhm.
jets flying over that morning had seen nothing other than burned out trucks. Mata Gur, commander of the paratroopers, left, but within a mile of the entrance, the first half track was slammed by a volley of fire on the defile walls. The driver was killed instantly, and the half track swerved sidewise and stopped. The second half track moved up and was also hit and stopped. Mata Gur was on the spot, but he had no question about what to do. He moved in, and as he did, he was drawn into battle with an entire Egyptian infantry battalion that had dug themselves into the ledges and caves of the cliff walls and had not been noticed by our planes. The battle was raging, and Mata Gur, still pinned down, the reconnaissance units skirted the cliffs on the right side, hoping to come down on the Egyptians from above. But when they got to the ridge, they were hit by a hail of bullets from the caves and hidden ledges on the far side. Unable to identify the source of fire, they assumed it was coming from below them and stormed down the wall. Here, some of them fell to their deaths, while others were caught by fire from the positions below, as well as from those opposite them.
This is written by Ariel Sharon, who was general then and during this war. Now, it looks pretty gruesome. I don't know. Yeah, if you understand war, maybe you understand all the moves that they made, but it sounded like they were in a pretty bad situation, bad spot. Okay. But what it does talk about is how it seemed like there was like cliffs and a pass below, like a valley or something, and there was different heights where people could have been hiding. So similarly to the story that happened in this week's Torah portion, the Jews were on their, in the desert, they were on their way to the land of Israel, and they were passing near the Amorite land, and they had no clue, but there was like mountains kind of that jutted out that had a lot of like kind of cliffs or edges on it, on two sides. One side was the side of the Amorite, and one side was actually already the boundaries of Israel. And they were walking through this valley that had like a stream going along through it below. And they're walking there totally innocently. And the Amorites, they hid themselves in the little like caves or cliffs or jut outs, you know, that the inside of the jut outs of these mountains, of these edges, of these cliffs, and they were going to ambush the Jewish people as they walked through the pass below. Okay. So what happens? Text 1b. Let's change it up here. Who wants to read next? Okay.
Wait. There were two towering mountains with a deep, narrow gorge between them. The cliff wall stood so close that a man could stand on one side and talk to his friend on the other side. The walking trail ran through this gorge. When the Jews entered the Amorite lands through the canyon, the Amorites intended to emerge from the caves in the mountains above and kill them with arrows and catapulted yes boulders.
Okay.
Catapulted.
So Hashem made this huge miracle, and the mountains like moved. There was a little shaking, and the mountains moved together and squished all those Amorites that were hiding in those cliffs or caves or whatever it was. Okay. And the Jews below, they had no clue. They were just walking through and everything seemed to be fine. They didn't notice anything happened until, okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, now we're gonna go back in 2A, back to the Sinai Desert in 1956 to see what happened to that other war. What happened? Did they get out okay? So it took 2A. Who wants to read? Go for it.
By this time, the enemy positions had been located, and after nightfall, 2 small units were sent along the cliff walls. Moving slowly along the cliff face, they attacked one Egyptian cave and firing hole after another in hand-to-hand fighting. For 2 hours, the sounds of battle reverberated through the pass before finally giving way around 8 o'clock to an ominous silence. When morning came, it was evident that the battle in the pass was over. From the caves and recesses where the Egyptians had been, there was no movement. Inside them, 260 Egyptian soldiers lay dead. Whatever survivors there might have been had slipped away during the night, but 38 paratroopers had also been killed.
So on one hand, it was a victory, but they did have to pay a price, the price of 38 paratroopers. But they did get rid of the Egyptians, and that was that. Now, what happened in the desert, as I already told you, kind of, that the Jews, you know, Hashem saved them, but let's read it inside. Or what Rashi explains it, 2b. Any volunteers? Wants to read?
2B? Okay.
Yeah, Catherine, you want to do it?
I'll read.
Okay.
There were clefts in the mountain on the Moab side of the canyon. Directly opposite these clefts, on the mountain on the Amorite side, there were protrusions that looked like horns and breasts. When the Jews prepared to pass through the canyon, the mountain on the side of what would soon be Israel, trembled like a maidservant emerging to greet her mistress and moved toward the mountain on the side of Moab. Its protrusions entered the clefts on the other mountain, thus killing the Amorites.
Okay. So now one Jew died. The enemy was totally destroyed. The Jews, I said before, did not even know what happened. So how did they find out? Okay. So let's read. Let's see. Text number 3. Rita, would you like to read? Are you okay?
Sure. From there, the blood of the slain flowed into the well. How did this happen? God said, "Who will inform my children of these miracles?" The proverb says, "If you give a child bread, inform his or her mother." After the Jews passed through, the mountains returned to their original location. The well descended into the river and brought up the blood, arms, and limbs of the slain and carried them around the Jewish camp. The Jews saw what had happened and sang an ode.
Okay, so what is this well that we're talking about over here? So there was a well that followed the Jews around a kind of throughout the desert all the years. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but more into detail about that. And that's how they were able to drink and wash themselves for all years that they lived in the desert. Now, so this well now flowed into the river that was below, and everything washed up, and everyone got to see what washed through. And then once they realized what was going on, then what they do, they broke out and they created a song. They composed a song to sing to Hashem. So just like we sing, there's the Az Yashir, the song that they sang by the sea that Moshe composed. So the Jewish people composed this song, the Bnei Israel, and they sang this song when they realized what a miracle Hashem did for them. Okay, so let's read the relations. 4a. Helen, want to read it?
Sure. Time the Israelites sang the ode to God, ascend, oh well, sing to it.
So they, in the song, it doesn't have the whole song here, but it goes on and glorifies the well that came along with them, and then it like kind of uses that as its like gratefulness to Hashem. And let's read 4b. This is the song. This is what happened at the splitting of the sea. 4b. Want to do it, Yvette?
At that time, Moses and the children of Israel sang this ode to God.
Okay, so there it says Moshe, and that like mainly Moshe and the children of Israel sang the ode. So Moshe made the song at the splitting of the sea. So the questions that we have here is why did they only make these odes or these songs only by these two instances in the desert? Why didn't they do it by every miracle that happened to them in the desert, when the man fell, or when they fought with the Amaleki, or when they, any other time that something happened, they were saved? Why did they not make a song for Hashem only in these two situations, these two events that took place? That's number one. Number two is, why over there did Moshe lead them in the song and at the splitting of the sea, and here in our story, at Arnon, did the Jewish people, why didn't Moshe not make the song? Why did they compose a song? Now, Moshe was much more, I guess he's, I don't know if the word is experienced, professional. He was able to make a much more elaborate song. And the Jewish people, and if you look at it, Az Yashir is very poetic, but here, the song that the Jews made is much more simple. So why didn't Moshe make the song here too? So these are our two questions that we have.
Go ahead. Well, is there something with the whole thing with the well, with the water, and what Moses hitting the rock, and so he didn't have really the right or the split the merit to be able to sing this song.
Yes, we'll talk about that. Definitely ties in. Yes, and Yvette.
Oh, I'm gonna say something. Is that both we had enemies in this case? So the water was that people were going to kill you, right? Because you have to look.
It's true. They both have to do with water. I didn't even think of that. Okay. People are going to kill you. But Amaleki also, Amalek wanted to kill them.
Right.
Bilam, remember the story of Bilam and Balak? They tried to. But Amalek was also a big army.
Oh.
Okay. So yeah, no, we have, but yeah, it's possibilities. They're good suggestions, good ideas.
Amalek was another situation. Did they save themselves, or Hashem saved them?
Who? Amalek? They had to stand. I remember Moses had to stand on top of the mountain and keep his hands up, and as long as his hands were up, the Jews had like the strength or the motivation to fight the Amaleki until they were able to kill them out.
Well, in these two cases, there wasn't a fight.
Ah, okay, that's good.
Yeah,
okay, good. So yes, what's the difference, right? So in these two miracles, and in all the other times they had issues or problems in the desert, and then they were saved. So yes, all the other miracles happened when there was an issue. They complained and they said, "Hey, what's going on here? Hashem, save us! We have nothing to drink. We have nothing to eat. Something's, Amalek is coming to attack us." And these miracles were more that like they didn't have that fear. They didn't know they didn't know the fear to be, to worry about it. Although even like by the sea, by the Az Yashir, they kind of, but they didn't, but the other issue, they didn't really have to do anything. They God totally did it for them. Yes. Okay.
So this is the pill. This has to
This
do
is the
with
pill. Yes, thank you. Okay. So yes, so at the sea, yes, they did have some fear. They knew that Egypt was on their backs, but all they had to do, put out his rod, sea split, and they gone through. They didn't have to do anything else. Here, they didn't even know. They didn't even know the danger. They didn't know anything. So do you ever see like a mom running after her toddler, and like the toddler doesn't even know they're like gonna run off the couch or fall over? The mother catches it before the kid's just going, having a good time, grabbing stuff, and the mother is just there to kind of facilitate and make sure nothing happens. The child has no clue what danger they're in. So here too, like Hashem kind of saved us without even knowing anything, that we knew anything was going on. We didn't even have to lift a finger. No soldier had to fight, no Jew had to fight for this to all to happen. Text 5a. So, Andrea, don't do it. So this is what Hashem told Moshe at the splitting of the sea. We'll fight. I'll fight for you. Moshe told the Jewish people that Hashem told him, you guys don't have to do anything. I'm going to do all the work. Okay. So it's an extreme, deep, or sorry, extreme, but it's a deep parental love. When a parent loves their child so much, they're going to do anything to make sure that they're safe, right? And protect their child. It's like protection, right? They're going to make sure that everything's okay. Child's not going to be harmed. They're going to go out and fight and be at bat for that kid, right? Don't want the kid to get, any, especially today's parents, they don't want them to fall and get hurt. They don't want anyone to yell at them. They don't want, anything, negative to befall on the child. So they're out there and they take care of everything. Okay. Let us read the Rebbe explains 5b. Who wants to read? Back to Eileen. You read already,
Sure.
right? Okay. Go for it.
Okay. The unique novelty of this miracle was, as the Torah specified, God will fight for you and you remain silent. In other instances of endangerment, our ancestors had to go to war and battle their enemies. Only then did God ensure their rescue, salvation, and victory in miraculous fashion. At the splitting of the Sea of Reeds, however, Jews were in a state of silence. They did nothing to save themselves from the Egyptians. God and only God fought off the Egyptians.
I'm going to continue, Eileen. There you go.
But what was the name of that Jew that was the first to go into the water when everyone was?
Yeah, Nachshon.
So then there was some
a little bit. There was a little bit, but nothing like extreme.
Right, it's not like they fought.
Moshe had to put out the rod, but there was no like major fighting or no, major upheaval over it.
You want me to finish this?
Yeah, continue.
Okay. When God steps in for us and does all of the heavy lifting in our stead, he demonstrates his extreme love for us. Not only does he save us from danger, but he also spares us the need to perform even a slight effort. This is why this miracle spurred the Jews to sing an ode to Hashem. Then the same occurred in the Arnon River. Here too, God saved us in a manner of God will fight for you and you remain silent. Thus, this miracle also inspired the Jews to sing an ode.
Okay, so in a way, the miracle here in Arnon was greater than at the splitting of the sea, because at the sea they had to feel the fear. They knew the Egyptians were coming after them. Here they didn't even, and Moshe had to intercede. This was totally Hashem. It was totally in Hashem's hands. They didn't know anything. Even Moshe didn't know. I mean, maybe Moshe kind of knew, but he didn't really know from a natural perspective that anything was going to happen. Totally oblivious.
Why is it that when Moshe called out, Hashem said, "Why do you call out to me? Go forward," or something? Is that because he just wanted them to take action?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, 5C. Okay, Catherine, you want to read since you're on the mic?
The element of God fighting for you was prevalent in the miracle at Arnon to the extent that the Jews knew neither of the danger nor of the salvation. In every other trial, Moses either solved the problem or prayed to God for salvation. In this case, salvation was facilitated without Moses's involvement. God did the fighting and the Jews remained silent. This was even truer now than at the Sea of Reeds. At the Sea of Reeds, the people were aware of the danger and Moses prayed for them. In this case, God saved them before they even knew of the danger.
Okay, so these O's were not just expressions of gratitude, but they're also showing love for Hashem. So like when someone professes their love to you, right? Let's say someone does something to you and you really, really feel it. So like, you're sick in bed or whatever, middle of the night, you don't feel well. Like, oh no, I really need to get a tea, but you're so, you don't know. You feel so sick. Should I get out of bed? Should I not? I really need it, but how am I going to get out of bed? And then you go downstairs and, your husband already has made a tea for you. How do you feel? So lovely. Taken care of, right? But not more than taken care of. Wow, he really thought ahead. Right. Or right, or whatever it is, or something, you're stuck at home, there's some problem, and a friend comes and brings you something without you even asking, right? You feel like, wow, this person really thought about me. They really thought they rescued me. Exactly. But so you really realize, hey, this is really a gesture, this is not just a gesture of niceness, it's not just being kind, but this person really loves me. And like in gratitude, like in return, you sing to them. But it's more than just like being nice or doing something, you're thankful for them. It's really a showing, a way of showing that the person loves you, and that really what touches you. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah.
Well, you can buy
So like, right? Someone does something super nice like that for you, super, super thoughtful, and like your response is, oh my goodness, I love you. Right? Oh, okay, not just thank you, but it's more like an I love you as opposed to, oh, just thank you, So these two miracles, they sang these songs because they were really acts of benevolency. They really felt Hashem's love, and they really felt that Hashem was like, watching out for them. And it's more than just, okay, wow, he did something nice for us. So now let's see, why wasn't he the one to compose a song at this story of Arnon? Why was it the Jewish people? Why didn't he want to say help them or do it with them? Why didn't it say Az Yashir Moshe Uvnei? So why didn't that Moshe and the Jewish people? Why did it just say the Jewish people sing? Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the answers. Yeah. So at the sea, he played a minor role, but he did play some type of role. But he led them. So he sang the song. So that's kind of what you're saying, Yvette. But here he was also right. He was also kind of like wasn't in on it. He was also kind of in oblivion, and he was just like everybody else. So everyone together made the song. So that's a simple answer. Very nice. Okay. Now let's look at another reason. And that's something that Sina brought up. Text number 6. You can do it, Sina.
Moses did not sing because the well was his stumbling block.
Okay, so the miracle, where did they find the miracle? When they looked at the water in the well. What is the story of the water in the well? So originally, when the Jews were in the beginning of their sojourn in the desert, they needed water. They're in a desert. And so Moshe tells them, hit the rock. Tells Moshe, hit a rock. Sorry, Hashem tells Moshe, hit a rock. They hit a rock and water starts to flow. And that kind of rock or that water kind of followed them through all their years in the desert until Miriam died. When because it says the well was in Miriam, which is Moshe's sister, and her merit. When she died, they needed water again. So this time, this is many, many years, this is almost 40 years later, Hashem tells Moshe, speak to the rock. And Moshe speaks to the rock and nothing happens. So he said, oh, well, hey, 40 years ago, I hit the rock. So he takes his staff and he hits the rock and water came out. But Hashem was really upset. He said, I told you to speak to the rock. I didn't tell you to hit the rock. Because of this, and we're not going to go into that whole story. It's a whole other story. Because of this, you're not going into the land of Israel, right? Yeah. See, it's a long story. Okay. Yeah, the reasoning is not very deep reasoning. Okay, so we do take a little bit about one of the reasonings. Well, not one of the reasonings, but he did talk to the wrong.
It kind of seems it kind of seems to liken back to the giving of the 10 Commandments, because they analogize, water to Torah, and Hashem spoke. And then when the Jews messed up, Moses had to manually carve commandments. And so it seems like there's this very spiritual and inherent relationship there.
definitely, yes, definitely Torah and water have, and yeah, we'll discuss it a little bit today. That was very good. That was very,
Well, he-
Interesting,
he
yeah.
was saved
Thank
in
you.
water, too.
but he was saved in water
He
too,
was
yeah.
saved in water.
From the water, yes, yes. So water has a lot to do with all the stories, yeah. So we want to go start going with all the significances. We can go on here all night. Hi, Shelley.
I made it.
You made it for Friday, right? We're at text 6. Okay, so what happens? So kind of they'll say, oh, okay, so Moshe, because the water, the well is where he kind of want to say quote unquote fell. Maybe he didn't want to sing about that, which is what Sina said. Maybe he didn't want to sing about the well because he that kind of was like it made him feel ashamed. Oh my gosh, this is where I messed up.
But did Moses really not sing? He particularly actually did not.
No,
sing.
he didn't like compose it with them.
Oh, he participated.
I'm sure he
in
participated, yeah,
the group.
Okay. Um,
He also stuttered. I figure like he's
Yeah.
kind of a humble, quiet person, you know.
but same time he's a leader.
Stutterers don't. I mean, you don't-
Yeah,
you
I
don't
figure he's
stutter when you
not
sing.
one to be,
Yes,
but
they
they
sing,
have like
right, yeah.
kind of hummed a tune or tapped his.
Well,
foot.
usually, actually with stutterers, if they sing, they don't stutter.
That's true. My brother was a stutterer.
Okay, so anyway,
That's
so
happened.
here maybe, oh, because the miracles was with the well, and this was kind of Moshe's downfall, whatever downfall, but you know, whatever you want to call it, this is what caused him to be punished, quote unquote. He's not the one that dealt with it. Okay, but really that's not such a good answer because there got to be a deeper answer, something better than that. We're looking for something more than just technicalities. Okay, there's all technicalities. We have to say something more more insightful. So yes, Moshe can compose a more beautiful song, let's say, than the Jewish people. So why doesn't he help them here? Because if you think about Moshe, as Baya said, he was humble, right? He had no ego whatsoever. He didn't have any self. So he wasn't going to be ashamed or upset about the well, say, okay, I'm not going to do this because this is what brought my downfall, or he's not going to, you know, not be part of it for something, you know, for something like that. It didn't go, and Moshe was a true leader. So he wouldn't say, okay, I'm stepping back. You guys do what you have to do. It doesn't go into the flow with everything else we know about Moshe. Okay. Right, but saying, but it wouldn't like make him not sing about the well or not compliment the well or the miracle of the well at the well, just because something happened to him.
Well,
Hope not. Right, right, okay. So let's talk more about the well. Okay, let's dig it a little deeper. Okay, pun intended. Okay. So what was Moshe's sin by striking the rock? And he didn't talk to it. What's so bad about that? Especially he did it before he's supposed to strike the rock, and he struck it and everything was fine. Why is this time? Why is it an issue?
Well, wasn't it that Hashem said not to?
Correct, yes, but why was it so bad? Why did he have to speak to it? Yeah.
I don't know.
Second time. Let's find out. Okay. It's possible, yeah. But by that time, Hashem gave him the water anyway. So the whole story is interesting. You're right. Yeah, the whole story is interesting. Something we don't understand. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Okay, so text 7a is the first time Hashem told Moshe to strike the rock. The original, the first time they were in the desert. 7a. Where we have to read it.
Strike the flint stone and water will emerge from it, and the nation will drink.
Okay, so now why 40 years later do we need to speak to the rock and not strike it? 7b. Would like to read it, Helen?
Okay. Talk to the rock. The passage does not say strike the rock. God was telling Moses, when students are young, the teacher is sometimes required to restrain them, to teach them to avoid danger. Once they grow older, they can only be taught with words.
Okay, so sometimes like you need some physical restraint for a child. They're gonna run, a very, very young child, right? They're gonna run to the street, you gotta hold them back. If they're older, you can say, hey, there's cars in the street, be careful, right? So when they're very young, and they're not, let's say, trained or experienced yet, you just have to hold them back. They're not gonna understand. You, I mean, you might say at the same time, no, dangerous, or don't go in the street, or, you know, but you're gonna have to stop them.
How many years?
Close to 40 years,
Oh, it was
like 39 years or something like that.
39
Yeah, yeah, okay. But eventually you need to train them for the future, and eventually you teach them and you use your words and you explain to them, oh, we don't touch the stove on the fire because it's hot, and we don't do this, and stay away from drugs and all the other things you have to teach your children, right? So you eventually have to explain with words. When they're younger, you just have to, like, sometimes hold on to them or grab them or whatever it is to make sure they don't do something that's not safe for them to do. So let's read though. So same too with the Jewish people and as they are an infant nation, and then as they grow into a more mature nation. That's 7c. You might want to read it. Maybe Bayo read it. That's a long, but maybe Bayo will read it. Okay.
I'll read it. I'll read.
Okay. Pauline. Oh,
Who, me?
okay, let Bayo read. Bayo didn't read yet. Okay.
Gotcha.
Everyone wants to
Okay.
read. We're having a reading. Okay, go ahead, Bayo. Refeeding. That's
Their commandment to the Torah was slack. The spiritual consequence was that they ran out of water.
but this is the second time around. Okay, I think. Yeah.
The spiritual symbol of the Torah. Hashem wanted to teach them that people in their spiritual infancy, new to the path of the Torah, sometimes required physical restraint. They might not take up their slack, allow the flow of their spiritual water unless physically compelled to do so. Hashem indicated this by instructing Moses to make the flint stone give water by striking it. Similarly, the people might require physical restraint to embrace the Torah, which is often compared to water. This is the manner of teachers with young students, who are about to get into trouble. However, 40 years later, Yvette, when they were in the desert of Kadesh, they had spiritually matured and embraced the yoke of the Torah. Therefore, a verbal reminder would have sufficed to help them avoid the spiritual pitfalls. Hashem implied this by instructing Moses to talk to the stone, and it would give its water.
Okay, so it's like a comparison of what the striking is just like the restraint when something's very young, and the Jewish people were young as a nation then, to 40 years later now, they are more mature, and the speaking, so basically Hashem's teaching them just that you could speak to the stone now, you can speak to you can understand things more by explanation and not just like by as a young child, it has to be like, restrained or held back. So when the Jews left Egypt, they were just like infants, okay? So think of a new jar that you need to open, right? It's stuck. And the only way you can get it open, you go, I what I do. I take it on the floor and I bang it on the floor, and then you can open it, right? But once you open it, then the well springs, then the whatever's inside that jar, I know, I'm thinking of pickles, whatever. The pickle juice can just go, can flow forth. The well springs are open. But till you get that wellspring opened, you need to give it a little bit of a strike, a bang. So when the Jews were in the desert in the beginning, they had to give that rock a little bang to show them, hey, now we're just young, and that's how you get the water out. But once the water's going, hey, it's just going, and now you can just speak to it when you need to like get a little bit more out. No, by the time you got to the end of the pickles, everything's all good. Okay. Yeah. So let's say it's saying that as opposed to a spiritual pitfall, let's say they start to be lack in observance of some way, some form or another. No, the water is just an example. The water is an example of of spirituality. So when they were very young in spirituality, when they didn't have anything yet, when they just left Egypt, it says they're on the 49th level of impurity. When as they went through the desert, they start to gain more and more. So they got the Torah, but then all those 40 years they were maturing and not just maturing, they're maturing as a nation, but as a nation in a spiritual sense. They're learning how to be a Jew, how to follow Hashem, how to have the emunah, how to have the faith and the trust in God. It wasn't just about spending 4 years in the desert because they got punished, but it was about learning how to have a relationship with God, how to be connected to him, and how to have true faith in him and know if God says something, it's actually going to happen. And if God says he'll make sure that you have food, you're going to have food. And if God says, is there, he'll make sure you have water. So no need to worry, no need to be anxious about it, no need to think about it. And so by the time they left the desert, by the time they entered the land of Israel, they felt this and knew this. So this is just like the well is compared to the spiritual flow of the Jewish people. So in the beginning, they had very little spiritual flow. You had to knock it, you had to restrain it, you had to just like hit the rock to get it started. For the Jewish people, you had to, whatever it was that they had to see or do to get them to start their journey. But then by the end of the 40 years, it would just, if the water started to slow down, if the spiritual flow to start slowed down, you just speak to them and say, hey, Jews, you got to do this, like that. That's what it meant.
Well, basically, actually, that means is not believing in God. Because it's to avoid
any hindrance in believing in God or believing in this. Any even from to any, it could be a small step down as opposed to. No, just any downgrade. Okay. So this is also why the Jews were the ones to compose a song here in this story as opposed to Moshe, because now they're mature enough to do it on their own. They matured. They're not infants anymore, and they're probably not teenagers anymore, but maybe they're young adults. So yeah, it may not be as good as the way Moshe would have made the song, but it showed the maturity from within themselves and also showed their gratitude and their love that they wanted to give back to Hashem for giving all these miracles to them. So it came from their own hearts, it came from their own work, even if it might not been so, like as elaborate, as poetic as Moshe's, it was still, it was like their own do-it-yourself, their first try at doing something on their own in this sense. So now let us look at the spiritual growth of the Jewish people at that time and see how sweet their song was. We can learn how far they came by learning about water and well springs in science, believe it or not. So as I said before, the subject of their song was about the well, was about water and well springs. And very interesting to note, we can also compare the Jewish people and their spiritual growth with how water works. We'll explain in a minute. 8a. I'll read it. Okay, here we go. Okay, now we can do Shelley. Let's do Shelley because Shelley just didn't get to read it.
Okay. Large amounts of water are stored in the ground. The upper layer of the soil is the unsaturated zone, where the water is present in varying amounts that change over time, but does not saturate the soil. Below this layer is the saturated zone, called groundwater, where liquid water is stored in all the pores, cracks, and spaces between the rock particles. The term aquifer refers to water-bearing foundations or rock that can hold large amounts of water. Aquifers are huge storehouses. Aquifers are a huge storehouse of Earth's water, and people all over the world depend on groundwater in their daily lives.
Okay, so most of this water comes from rainfall, but also comes from rivers. Okay, so now let's continue talking about the water to understand more. Then at the end, I'll explain it all. 8b. Eileen?
I thought this was a continuation of
mine.
mine.
It's a next text, but
okay.
Yeah, whatever.
Did you
Yeah.
call on me?
I did.
Okay. Most rivers exchange water with surrounding groundwater aquifers. Waterways can either gain water from or leak water into the ground, depending on the underlying rock formations and groundwater levels. Where groundwater levels lie, below those of nearby streams, water can infiltrate this, reducing river stream flow and recharging the aquifer below.
Okay, so the waters, like they come from different places, right? They gather into the ground. Now, the water that's coming from the river, like I suppose it's moving, or I'm guessing, our scientists will let us know. The dirt or mud or whatever else it is gets carried in with it. And so the water that's coming in is very murky, not clean, not filtered, not the kind of water that you might want to drink. But by the time it reaches a subterranean rock, because it goes through all these steps, we'll read in 8C, the water actually cleans itself, filters by itself. Yeah, natural filter. Exactly. Yes. Okay, Andrea, you can read C.
If underground long enough, lack of sunlight causes most algae and water plants. See that?
Okay, so that's it, right? Okay, so it starts out murky and dirty and ends up beautifully refined filtered water. You can drink it. So the water is actually cleaner and fresher now than it was in the river. Yes, yes, yes. So this is a metaphor. Moshe is a holy man. His holiness just flows through him like a water in a riverbed. Okay? The Jewish people, they're very holy souls, but their connection to holiness might not be visible. You might not see the holiness like right on them. And they you don't like see the clear water, which is just, you said before, water is Torah. Now, but as it travels underground, it goes through 3 years. So as the Jews, as the Torah flows through the Jews, as they go through the years of the desert and they're learning and maturing in a spiritual way, by the time they come out at the end, they are like that water that got filtered naturally and in a way that's purer than the water from the river red than the Moshe. So the song that they were able to sing after this happened and after their 40 years in the desert, it came from a very refined spiritual place, in a way higher than what Moshe could have like given sang. So when they were so all the years in the desert, their faith was tested so many times, right? So many different things happened, so many challenges, so many difficulties. And it took time, but eventually they realized that they were under Hashem's protection. They realized God is watching over them. They realized they have to just trust in God, and they bonded with God slowly. It wasn't easy, but they got there, and this bonding gave them pleasure, and also gave and in return. So by digging deeper into their character, digging deeper, and finding their faith and their trust in God, it refined them and made them so holy and so pure, like those subterranean waters that got automatically filtered through the rock. So let us read.
The people that actually were in Egypt and the people who were born in the desert, do they have like a different perspective, like how they learn Torah? Meaning,
That's a good question. That's a very good question. So right, because you're saying most of the people that left Egypt, the men between the ages of 20 and 60, didn't actually make it to the land of Israel. Right. But the people who were young, the young children, or the women, or other people, or the tribe of Levi. So different, but they still were born. Oh.
20 through 60.
They didn't look. They only got the Torah at Mount Sinai the first year in the desert, or the first 40 days, whatever, in the desert. 49 days. Right. No, they're always learning Torah. When the Torah was given, right? Moshe taught it to Yoshua, to his students. Yoshua taught it. There was a whole chain of teaching Torah. So everyone was learning Torah the whole time in the desert. And that's what's also so good about the desert. They didn't have to worry about any physical things. Hashem took care of it all they had to do was learn and study. They didn't have to work. They didn't have to work to make money. They didn't have to work to like, yeah, they didn't have to work to like grow food to eat. Okay, so yeah, text number 9. Catherine,
Sure.
thanks.
Our souls are vested in physical bodies for our duration on the earthly plane for only one reason, to become a subterranean wellspring. When water travels through soil, it is filtered and purified. Similarly, our souls are filtered when we perform physical acts of mitzvot with tactile objects. Deeper still is when our godly soul prevails over our animal soul, to restrain it and to transform its darkness into light. In other words, our body's corporality and the world's physicality form a passageway through which the soul reconnects with its root, the living God. Creating this wellspring entails digging and carving, the removal of the soil that seals the mouth of the wellspring.
Continue the second. Okay, continue, Catherine.
Similarly, we must remove everything that conceals and covers our innate love for God. We accomplish this by restraining our competing drives, compelling ourselves to avoid the forbidden and to indulge in the permitted only for the sake of heaven, for holy purposes. This subordinates our will to do His will. This includes committing to study the Torah for longer periods than we are accustomed to, giving more charity than we are naturally inclined to give, etc. These and similar behaviors dig, carve, and remove our inner coarseness, rooted in impurity till they are completely nullified. This brings our hidden love for God into the open.
Okay, so yeah, so the Jews observed the mitzvahs, traveling the desert. It wasn't easy. Imagine like living in your tent, camping, and having to try to do all the mitzvahs that they had to do. Was not an easy 40 years in the desert. 40 years of facing the unknown, 40 years of heat, 40 years of, could have been famine, could have been thirst, could have, whatever it was. So by the time they ended their 40 years, they realized Hashem is always with them. Hashem is always protecting them. He'll always be there. And so all of this was like a filter. It filtered out all their doubts, all their impurities, until they were very spiritually pristine. Their trust in Hashem was very, very pristine and pure. And by the end of these 40 years, each Jew was able to say, hey, I have a personal relationship with Hashem. Hashem is really real for me. He really is there. And they really could feel and see God, which maybe they couldn't see 40 years earlier. Yeah, they saw big miracles in that way, but not just through everyday living. Now they're so much more spiritually refined, spiritually in tune, as I said before, like on the level of Moshe. Text number 10. I guess, Sina, you want to do it?
After the Jews traveled in the desert for 40 years, the Torah states, and God did not give you a heart with which to know and eyes with which to see until this very day. Our sages of blessed memory observed. From this, we infer that it takes 40 years for pupils to ascend to the level of their teacher's knowledge. However, after 40 years, one does indeed master one's teacher's knowledge.
Wow, so after 40 years of work, they finally get it.
Where did you start?
Wow.
At least you're in the desert, huh? So in Grand, you're right. You're like the teacher. Yeah, so that's what the Jews, they were like now, like their teacher Moshe. Yes. Yeah. So now Hashem was real to them, it was tangible. They themselves could profess that same love on their own, then Moshe doing it for them or helping them along with the words. So it might have not been as elaborate as Moshe's, but was still so fresh, like water of spring water, like water from a spring. Text number 11.
That the Jews sang their oath to God without Moses' leadership tells us that they merited to become like a wellspring of living waters. This is an exalted level of purity that their predecessors in the previous generation did not merit to attain.
Okay, so now they stepped up to the plate, and they weren't just students, but they were teachers on their own. So we learned a lot today. Why, Moshe didn't sing the song. Why, what happened with the rock? What, all the different miracles. But we'll go back to the beginning of the class. We talked about the pill, the Ozempic pill for problems and worries. Okay, sorry, yeah. So yeah, so we gotta have, maybe you could take a pill and have a challenge-free life, or worry, you know, a problem-free life and all that kind of stuff. But then where will be all the lessons that you would have learned from all the things that you've been through? So
40 years, right?
I think that's when it starts. Maybe the first 40 years are like easy street, right?
Oh, no, that's.
So yeah, so no one wants problems, no one wants challenges in life. That's true, and I'm not wishing them on anybody, God forbid. But if you look back at your challenges, if you look back at different things, that events and things that happen in your life, you see like, how have I grown from it? Where have I learned from that? What did that experience take me? Hopefully it took you somewhere better. It took you somewhere, you know, to a better place, to somewhere where you realize things that you haven't realized before. You matured, you grew, you're nicer to people because of it. You know, you're a better person because of it. You're more patient, whatever it is. So yeah, so again, just like the Jews in the desert, they had a lot of challenges, they had a lot of difficulties, but at the end, we see how much they grew, matured, ready to enter the land of Israel. Hopefully Hashem will end all our problems, bring Mashiach, and only good peace. And it's been more than 40 years of the world that we can do that. Yeah. Amen. Amen. Well, when Mashiach comes, it's a whole different set, right? You're not growing in that way. You're not how we are today, and how we live our life down here. It says we're like always growing, always moving. So hopefully you're always moving forward and not backwards, but you're able to like go from, so I say, from level to level, from somewhere, from, you know, point A to point B. When Mashiach comes, it's not going to be like that. It's true. You're gonna say, oh, I wish it was Golos now. I wish it was the old days where I was able to do a mitzvah.
I hope that we're not saying.
I just only saying because like you wanted to have that chance, like, you know, you're like in retirement, you know, I don't know what the right word is, but you get to enjoy life and no problems 100%. But I know it's been.
Well, that's not what it is. Big 10, you know what I'm saying? Everybody needs